With Donald Trump's election to the nation's highest office now in the rear view, several Democrats will gather today via telephone conference call with President Obama and Hillary Clinton to discuss many things, including the Democratic Party's future. And while Trump's win continues to rile demonstrators across the country, former Democratic presidential candidate, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, says that he is keeping an open mind with regard to the future. Here with me to discuss that and a whole lot more, including his new book, Our Revolution, is Vermont Senator and former presidential candidate, and perhaps future presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders. Senator, it's very good to have you.
Good to be with you.
I want to ask you, in fact, about an op-ed published over the weekend in the New York Times, one you wrote, in which you spoke to the idea that you are willing, more than willing, perhaps, to reach out and keep an open mind, if nothing else, with what ideas Mr. Trump offers and when and how we can work together. Having lost the nationwide popular vote, however, he would do well to heed the views of progressives. If the president-elect is serious about pursuing policies that improve the lives of working families, I'm going to present some very real opportunities for him to earn my support, end quote. To which opportunities are you referring?
Look, this guy said, Mr. Trump said, President-elect Trump said, I'm a champion of the working class. You're hurting, I'm there, vote for me. Well, we're going to hold him accountable. Right now, the middle class in this country for the last 40 years has been in decline. You got millions of people who are trying to get by on 9, 10, 11 bucks an hour. We've got to raise the minimum wage. Mr. Trump, you're going to work with us? Let's raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Mr. Trump, you have a unique opportunity, given, your perceived attitude toward women, to be a leader on this fight. Say equal pay for equal work. We'll be with you there. We have a disastrous trade policy, something Mr. Trump certainly talked about. Let's go forward together. Let's kill the TPP. Let's create a trade policy by which corporate America invests in this country, not just in China. You got millions of people leaving school deeply in debt. Mr. Trump talked about this issue. We're going to hold them accountable. What are you going to do about the outrageous level of student debt? What are you going to do about making college affordable? So those are areas that I think we are going to say, you talked about the needs of the working class. You said they're in pain. You said they're hurting. Let's work together. Have the guts to take on the drug companies. Have the guts to take on Wall Street. Have the guts to take on corporate America. Let's see if we can work together to do that. But where we will not work with him and where we will vigorously oppose him, if he takes the anger that the American people are feeling because of a declining standard of living, and if he turns that anger against African Americans, Latinos, or Muslims, or other minorities, we will stand up and fight him vigorously.
You mentioned this anger that he tapped, and perhaps the Democratic Party, for whatever reason, failed to fully appreciate it.
Well, the reason is that too many liberal elitists are running the Democratic Party. Look, that's no great secret. All right? The Democratic Party was once the party of the American working class. Very few people think that's the case today. You can't be, in my view, I speak only for myself, a party which raises substantial sums of money from Wall Street and the wealthy and make any worker in this country think you're on their side.
Earlier today, you said you're deeply humiliated by the failure.
I am
part of
the son of the white working class, okay? And the Democratic Party that my parents grew up with understood that the white working class, that the working class, black workers, Latino workers, that was their base, not Wall Street, not corporate America, not wealthy individuals.
Secretary Clinton has pointed to the two letters sent by the FBI Director Jim Comey as for ultimately the reasons she thinks she lost the election. Others have argued, however, that perhaps the campaign failed to see your success in the primaries.
We're talking about two different things. I think what Comey's role was unacceptable, and I think that hurt Secretary Clinton. But the real question is why she was not winning this election by 10 or 15 points. The real issue is, why did millions of American workers who voted for Mr. Obama not support Secretary Clinton? And the answer is that people are angry. They want change. And I think the Democratic Party, not just Secretary Clinton, did not give them a message, a vision which says, we are going to be on your side. You can't afford child care. You're making 10 bucks an hour. You're worried about retirement because you have no money. We're going to expand Social Security. We're going to deal with the crooks on Wall Street. We're going to lower the price of prescription drugs. We, the Democratic Party, have the guts to take on the ruling class of this country. I think that was not the message that came from Secretary Clinton.
And yet, people will say that change at any cost is perhaps a price too high to pay. Specifically, I point to the two appointments by Donald Trump as his chief of staff. Reince Priebus, thought to be somebody who perhaps can work with the GOP establishment in the future, but also Steve Bannon. As a senior advisor, as the former head of Breitbart News, he is in lockstep with the alt-right movement. It is said to be anti-Semitic, sexist, white nationalist. That troubles many people.
And that should trouble many people. And it's not just Mr. Bannon, it's much of the rhetoric that comes from the candidate, Mr. Trump. One can only hope that a lot of what Mr. Trump said during the campaign was just that, and that he's going to get beyond that and understand that the President of the United States cannot have an attitude which divides us up, which attacks people who are minorities. And I hope, the hope is that he will grow and understand that in the presidency.
But appointing Steve Bannon to that
That's
post,
a very bad sign, yes.
We've seen that apparently the tweeting is going to continue, and he attacked the protesters across the country. Again, I guess we only have the signs that we have to work with, but Steve Bannon suggests, again, a change perhaps that will come at a great expense.
Look, when people are angry, we can go forward in one of two ways. We can look at the causes of the anger. If the middle class is in declining, if people are working longer hours for low wages, if 43 million people are living in poverty, okay, how do we deal with that reality? People are angry. They should be angry. Almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. How do we deal with that? That's one way. That's what I believe. But there's another way to say, hey, you're angry. You can't afford to send your kids to college. You know what the fault is? The fault is that little Muslim girl in the school down the street. She wears that hijab. Why don't you be rude to her, be a bully to her? Get your anger out against African Americans. Get your anger out against some Latino farm workers making $9 an hour. Hey, you feel really good. That's the choice that we have as a nation. Do we have the guts to get to the root cause of our problem? Why so many people should be angry? They're angry because they're working longer hours for low wages. They're angry because they're worried about the future of their kids. They're angry because they're seeing 52% of all new income going to the top 1%. We have a reason to be angry about that. Let's take out our anger. And that's what this book, Our Revolution, is about. We talk about ways to move this country forward, not to divide us up with racism or sexism.
He did speak in his interview last night with Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes to some of the extreme positions he took during the election cycle as it regards the instant repealing and replacing of Obamacare. He now says pre-existing conditions should remain a part of anything that replaces it. He said that he thought marriage equality was law that was already here, apparently not to be repealed. Immigration, he seemed to walk back from the idea of a deportation force. Are these the sorts of things that give you a sense of hope?
Well, I think, what we can say about Mr. Trump is he ran, the most unusual campaign in modern American history. And this guy is nobody's fool. Let's be clear about that. I would simply hope that as things settle down and the campaign ends, he begins to talk to people. For example, one area where media talks very little about is climate change. Okay. I hope he sits down with scientists who say, Mr. Trump, you're wrong.
He said it's a hoax. He has appointed as the head of his EPA transition team a noted climate change denier.
Right. And you know what this means? If he follows through in that direction, it's not just the United States of America. Climate change is a global crisis. And if the whole world, Germany and the UK and Russia and China say, oh, the United States is not going to do anything about it, why do we have to do anything about it? You know what happens? The planet that we leave to your kids and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren may not be a habitable planet.
But with Donald Trump in the presidency, with congressional majorities in both the House and Senate, and an appointment to the Supreme Court that would tip the balance, how much can folks such as yourself, and the Democratic Party perhaps as a whole, fight back against these sorts of things?
I think we can be effective in fighting back, and I'll tell you why. While you're absolutely right, we are in the minority in the House and the Senate and state legislatures all over the country. The issues that we and I talk about are the majority. Raising the minimum wage to a living wage, making college affordable, dealing with climate change, pay equity for women. You know what? Vast majority of the American people support that. They don't think billionaires like Mr. Trump should get away without paying any taxes at all. So I think we have the majority behind us on our ideas. I think we need a radical shakeup at the Democratic Party. So instead of doing fundraisers with wealthy people, we're out at the grassroots, you know, in the veterans halls and in the union halls and talking to working class people about how we make positive changes in this country.
I want to get you out of here then on this one. As it regards that, we learned because of the hacks into the DNC emails of the attempts by some, including Debbie Wasserman Schultz, perhaps to stifle your campaign. We have now seen, as the DNC looks for new leadership, Minnesota Congressman Keith Ellison. You are in support as the party does look for new leadership and a new direction. What do you make then of Congressman Ellison, rather, as the head of a new DNC?
I've known Keith for many, many years, and Keith understands that the future of the Democratic Party is grassroots politics, not simply raising money. Money is always important, but you just can't base your party on a liberal elite and raise money from the wealthy. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to get into the grassroots. You got to be talking to the factory workers, the farmers. You got to be talking to ordinary Americans, bringing them together to take on big money, which today has so much power over the economic life of the country, the political life, and the media life of America.
It's an important message, of course, of your campaign and life moving forward. It's Our Revolution, your new book. Senator Sanders, very much appreciate the time this morning.
Thank you very much.